Okay, so what's happening is the shape is extruding. So it's taking the start footprint of a building and extruding it up. And so that creates additional sides. So you have the left, like if it's just a square shape, you have four additional sides and a top and a bottom. So now it's a 3D form. And we sent that, after that function was completed, we sent that straight to a roof function. And what we saw was happening is that it was taking all these different new sides that was created from going from a footprint to a 3D form and assigning a roof function to every single side. So it was making our buildings look kind of weird, like that there was a roof like on each side of the building. So basically what we need to do is we need a middle step. We need a step in this rule that's going to first extrude the footprint to a height, to a mass that's a height, but then take that mass and split it up into components. So you have components that make up the bottom, the sides, and the top of this 3D form. And so that's called a component split. So if you go to help and help contents, you can search component splits, and you can look at component split operations. The different ways in which you can take a 3D mass and split it into parts is all explained in text, and then it's explained in illustrated instructions as well. So what we did is we did this, and then we assigned a roof to all of the shapes, and so our buildings are looking weird. What we need to do next is this, is to assign it into component parts. So I want to replace this part of the first function with what we're calling a component split. So basically, it's going to take the building footprint, extrude it, and then after it extrudes it, it's going to assign a front, a back, a left, a right, and a bottom and a top side. So the next step would be to write a function for each part. So for the front of this building, I would want to write a front rule, and so forth. Now we're not really going to articulate this model, meaning this model is not going to, the 3D model is not going to have windows and doors and things like that. So we put a period next to the rule for the front, so the front rule, basically to tell the program this rule hasn't been written, so I want you to skip this part. So after you've split my mass into all these parts, skip everything, and you do that by putting the period next to that function. But when we get to the last function, which is the top, the roof, we're not putting a period there because we actually wrote the roof rule. And again, that roof rule is going to assign a shape based on the attribute that it has in the data, in the roof type data. Okay, so now I think this rule is good to go. Let's test it to make sure it works. So let's close this rule, save. Okay, so my buildings are looking kind of funky over here. Let me select all of my buildings, and then I'm going to assign the rule, and it looks like it's working better. Yeah, so this is what we want. So for the one building where we changed the attributes, now it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's assigning that shed shape just to the top part of this building. So let me go ahead and change this back to what it's supposed to be. This building is supposed to have a flat roof. We just changed it to shed, for example, which I'm glad we did because that's how we learned our rule was missing a piece. All right, so you are all set with what you need to know to be able to create the 3D model. So what we're going to do is I want you to play around with the CityenGine interface, create the 3D models. Once we create the 3D models, our next task is we have to find a way to export this 3D model in a format that works well with the 3D printer. So for instance, I'm going to turn my terrain off, and so this is what the model looks like. Looks like this building is maybe missing some height data. I'm just going to assign something just for, okay. All right, so this is my for tile 5, my final model. So the 3D model will look something like this. And I'm thinking, now that I'm looking at this, I think that actually we should make our base even thicker than that. So let's change the rule. And so if you want to make a change to the rule, you select the shape that the rule is assigned and just right-click Rule File next to in the inspector window. And I think let's go to 9. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that's a little thicker. I think that might give us a little bit more structure to the... Okay, so this is it. So this is our final model. We select the entire model when we're ready to export it into a 3D file, and select Export Models. And here are the different options that we can export it as. We can export it as a .obj, a collada. We can export it as a 3D multipatch file. These are all the different ways that we can export it as a KML file to go into like Google Earth or something like that. I think there may be, this is where we're going to have to kind of work together and figure out what is the next best steps. Because what we learned is that exporting it as a .obj creates some triangulations, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So when you, so let's just do that again because I think I went too fast. So select File, Export Models, select .obj, hit Next. It's going to automatically put your export into your Models folder of the CityEngine project file, and we're going to call this Test. And as far as all of this stuff, that all of the different options, really what you need to worry about is do not export the terrain layer. We don't need the terrain in this model. We just want the models. And the models are the 3D forms that are created through the CGA script. So models, no terrain layers. All of this other stuff we don't need to worry about. Yeah, you don't need to worry about any of this other stuff. There's no texturing going on. We just really need to remove the terrain from the export and select models and hit finish. Okay. So if you go to preview this model, so let's find, so training models. So this is a preview of what the model looks like, and here's we're coming across some problems with the 3D printer that requires some cleanup. For instance, if you take a look, some buildings come through really nice, no issues. Some buildings come through with some slight triangulations. So we kind of have to experiment. So if you can see right here on the top of these buildings, there are some triangulations going on. And so that's where we're going to have to kind of work together and figure out what is the solution for that. So that will be the next step. First step is let's get these 3D models created. If you have any questions, please email or call me. Thank you so much.